happy to have everybody join. This is awesome. It's going to be a really fun workshop. I had a lot of joy and excitement putting it together, so I'm really grateful you're here. Thank you. Right. This is a very special opportunity to learn and create in space about the topic of overworking. So just to give you a sense of what we're up to today, we're just going to set some community guidelines. We'll do some intros. We'll go over some intentions, and then we'll get into the content. What is overworking? What causes it? I'll share 4 archetypes. We'll do a bit of journaling and visualization. So if you don't have paper, or however it is that you do journaling, piece of paper and a pen or pencil or whatever, crayon, go ahead and make sure you have something to write with, because later on we're going to do a little bit of reflection. I'm a very practical person, so I don't share information that then you cannot put into action. And I find that reflection is a very helpful way to crystallize things that came through in your understanding so that you can keep it with you and act on it if you feel called. We'll do a recap, a sharing, and Q&A, and then we'll do some gratitude and closing. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or take yourself off of mute. So that's what we're doing today. And I do a lot of group work. Working in community is one of my very favorite things. I love being in space with people who are seeking, who are looking to connect and be supported. So there are a couple guidelines that I always bring up when we're working in groups, which is, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. So just say who you are and where you're from or where you're connecting from. Okay, Kira is from Greenville. If we happen to be in a place where we're doing some coaching or sharing, if you hop in and something is resonating with you, in this space, we don't give advice. So if you feel like you have advice to give, that advice may be for you. So just keep that in mind. This is a space where I always want people to feel comfortable and safe sharing what's coming up for them. This is a space that I hold with love, unwavering love for people and their possibilities. And often I may ask a question if we do some coaching about, can I give feedback, or are you open to a reflection, that kind of thing. But advice is not the space that we're in now. And I kind of think of this group setting as Vegas. So share only about your own experience outside, and what stays here, what happens here stays here. This is also a brave space. So this is a shame-free zone. So whatever it is that you are here for, I encourage you to make the most of this community, make the most of this time to be together, and really just consider that in my eyes, you are whole, you're perfect, you are complete. There is no lack. So I'm holding space and just affirming that. And in this space, I ask you to commit to yourself and what you need. So if a need is not being met, you can let me know. You can put that in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can get my attention. But you're really here to learn. So I already acknowledge you for showing up to commit to yourself. You're welcome to ask for help. You're welcome to communicate. And as we go through this, there may be some stuff that arises, and that is a natural byproduct of healing. So if something comes up that feels a little uncomfortable, that's all just part of the process, and no one here is going to hold that against you. No one here is going to have feelings about that. Can we all agree to these guidelines? Anyone have any opposition to these? Okay, great. And who else would like to introduce themselves in the chat? Really like to get a sense of who's in the room. Okay, we've got Dree. She's based in Atlanta. Love community spaces and learning. Often lean on work as a safe space. It is routine and familiar. And so I build in more of it than I should sometimes. Here to learn and shift mindset. I can hear myself, see myself in you. So yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, work. If it's what you knew, what you know, and it's comfortable and safe and normal, definitely can relate to leaning in and maybe making that bit more of a big thing than it needs to. Anyone else who'd like to introduce yourself? It just helps us get a sense of who is in our community here. Okay, so Today I'm your coach, your healer for this program. I am the business healer. My name is Marte Siebenhar, and I love holding space for people and their possibilities. And I believe in all of your possibilities, all of your dreams, the highest, most thriving, most successful version of you, which maybe is not exactly where you are at this moment, but definitely exists because we're multidimensional beings. So I believe it's there, it's real, it's happening. And I'm holding that as the affirmed version of you that we are looking to just draw closer into this dimension. And I do believe in your ability to receive and experience all of that. And I'm committed to, and I envision and happy to support your receiving of what you came for. So if you just joined us, okay, we've got Casey from Wisconsin. Really awesome to meet you. Thank you for joining. Pablo, hospitality business owner, 2 concepts running 7 days a week. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of working. So I hear you. Yeah, we're going to get into it. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Oh, and Natalia Russell from Lynn University in Boca. Welcome. Happy to have you here. Okay, so who am I? I'm Marta. In my 20s, I lived in New York City for years. My average bank balance was $7. I went from pretty much having my needs met by my parents to being responsible for myself with pretty much no training and no understanding of how to do that. And without an income and being a full-time student that at the beginning was not getting a lot of gigs and other paid opportunities, I really struggled. So I went from having my needs met to pretty much living in poverty very quickly, almost instantly, in one of the most expensive cities in the world. And now I run a multi-six-figure business, helping business people use energy as a tool for success and prosperity. I love what I do. I'm so grateful. So the question is, how did I get from here to here? And for me, that was really a question of being in the right place at the right time. I met my spiritual teacher. His name is Master Choka Sui, and I learned about energy. Energy is also called ki or chi or prana. If you see people doing Tai Chi, they're moving energy. And I studied pranic healing at that time, and I took his prosperity course. I tested it out. I began practicing the science of prosperity, and I was doing it very casually. But in 2019, when I went full-time with my business, I really started practicing the science of prosperity on purpose and in a concerted, regular manner. And it really changed everything. My business during COVID, where I used to work, furloughed a lot of people, my business doubled. So I can't explain it other than saying I use these tools, and these are the tools that I share. And these are the tools that I hope all of you are walking away with. We're not going to dig into everything right now, but I think when we understand the reasons behind why certain things are happening, it helps give us information for a pathway forward. So I'm sharing this with you. And why am I doing that? I'm sharing this with you because my experience is that when great, fantastic people like you have success, have thriving as a normal thing, an operationalized thing, something that is not rare, but something that is daily life, they do great things. So when good people are prosperous, they create world change. They support communities, they create innovation, they have joy in their lives. So that is what I hope for you. I always feel like if you're a healer, you want to help end human suffering. And in this way, let's lighten it up a little bit around work. So that's really why I'm doing this here tonight. And then how I got from where I was really suffering financially to being a success in business. And of course, I'm not successful on my own. I'm successful because I have amazing people that I get to work with. And I'm really grateful for that. So now it's your turn. I'm curious. We're in a learning space. And by the way, don't take anything I say for granted. Please test it and check it out for yourself. So definitely believe in experimentation, doing experiments. And again, when we have more of an understanding, it's easier to run experiments. But I'm by no means the guru and the person who has it all figured out. I'm still also a learner. And the part of the reason I love group community work is that I get to learn and I get to hear from all of you, and together we create a really beautiful space for learning and exploration. And I think that's what makes my communities really special. I just finished a program, my group prosperity program called Pathway to Prosperity. I've done this 2 iterations. The second iteration, this one, which we just concluded, I added a community element that wasn't there the first time. And everybody on our last call said that they loved the community. It was the first type of community they've had where they felt like they could show up as themselves and feel loved and supported, and even get a little vulnerable without feeling shame or guilt or anxiety. And I take a lot of pride in that. But they did that. They created that space. And I'm so pleased that it's a really special thing, you know, to experience a community like that, let alone to be the facilitator of bringing that group together. So I think group work is so special, and I thank you for being here tonight. So it's your turn. I would love for you to put in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you want to share verbally. Like, why are you here? Like, what is it that you're here to get? Some of you hinted at some of that in the chat earlier when you were introducing yourself, but yeah, like, why are you here? And I'd love for everybody to just don't overthink. This is not a place of perfection. This is just you being you, you being authentic. You are welcome here as that version of you. You and your fullness, you and your mess, like however you're showing up today, we welcome it all. But would love to hear, you know, why are you here? Yeah, Kira.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I am here because I find myself in a space where I'm addicted to the hustle a bit. I've been scaling out some parts of different parts of my work, just making things a little bit easier for myself. And some of the blog writing I do specifically, and I had my first anxiety attack 2 weeks ago. It was like several days, maybe it wasn't an attack, but and it was really because I everything was working, and I'm not used to that. I'm not used to everything working. I was kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop. So I am excited to be in a space where I can release some of the shoulds in finances, in business, and really welcome in a prosperity and abundance mindset.
Yeah, I feel that. It's almost like your body is not used to what happens when things are working. So thank you for sharing that. I totally relate. And I really appreciate you sharing that and just coming right out and saying, you know, it doesn't feel normal to feel like things are working. And yeah, I totally relate. Anyone else? Why are you here? We got some in the chat to get some insight. Amazing. Oh, somebody remembers overworking even as a kid in elementary school with all the homework. I want to unlearn that working more is better. And I want to be smarter about how I spend my time. Yeah, I relate too. When my peers were doing peer reviewed papers and they just gave everybody an A and didn't really read it, I was the kid who like took it as seriously as I would have my own assignment, right? I never let myself get the pass. And I'm from the Midwest, so the hard work and you have to earn it. And unless you really earn it, maybe it doesn't count. Like I relate to everything that you're saying. Yeah, overworking but not moving forward is what Marcia says. Yeah, just this feeling of maybe being on a spin cycle. It's like we're just kind of like grinding, but we're not getting anywhere. Yeah, I relate to that. To improve my working life, hence my personal life. Yeah. Ooh, and when you're in hospitality, it's kind of like, is there ever time off? Is there ever a break? Because people need to sleep, people need to rest, people need to buy things. Yeah, that's like people are their needs keep going, right? So attending to those needs. Love that. But yes, personal life, so important, so important. And something that until recently, I also put on the back burner. It's kind of like I live with a similar founder, business owner person who also doesn't seem to notice when too much work is too much work. So in some ways, we have to keep each other in check. Okay, Casey says work-life balance, setting boundaries. Yes, I hear you. We're going to talk about boundaries. Natalia says, I haven't recognized any overworking, but I'd end up getting burnout every so often. So I'm here to figure out how to optimize work-life balance. All right. So it sounds like we have a lot in common here. So thank you for sharing. All right. So we can't really move energy or come to a better understanding until we are all talking about the same thing. So what is overworking and how can you recognize it? So I looked at Dr. Google. Dr. Google says, overworking is consistently working beyond standard or healthy limits, often leading to physical exhaustion, mental burnout, and decreased well-being, and can include involuntary overworking due to unrealistic deadlines or insufficient staffing. So if you run your own business or you're responsible for businesses, the insufficient staffing is kind of where you start out as a founder. And unrealistic deadlines sometimes have nothing to do with what you're planning. Like, I just changed business entities and there's some paperwork that I filed I gave the wrong date and it's taken a bit of time to kind of get things right because I made a mistake on my paperwork and it just needs to happen. And it needs to happen when you get those urgent notices. It's a little stressful, right? So I understand the deadlines thing. But also, sometimes those timelines are things happening inside us. The deadline of, well, I expect myself to get this productivity goal done by X time, and then you don't. And then there's a shame spiral that starts. So I find that while Dr. Google is correct, there's also the emotional reverb that we tend to add to it, which is not always healthy for ourselves. So signs and symptoms, I just thought this might be interesting. What are the signs and symptoms, according to Dr. Google, of overworking? Physical exhaustion, mental burnout, stress and anxiety. We heard that from Kira. Poor work-life balance. A couple of you mentioned that. Health issues. Hopefully nobody is that far along. Decreased productivity. Dread of work. I've been there. Taking on more work than others. Again, if you're a solopreneur, not a whole lot of other people that can take on work, so that can be stressful. Not getting enough sleep or turning to alcohol or other unhealthy coping mechanisms. So those are the signs and symptoms of overworking. But let's really talk about what causes it. So what causes overworking? Google says unrealistic workloads, high job expectations, understaffing, poor time management, lack of resources, high pressure workplace culture, and personal circumstances. And while all of that is true, again, I find that what Dr. Google is not talking about is the personal expectations we put on ourselves. So that may be true in like a big corporate workplace, but also everybody that I work with has something in them that has high standards, that wants to perform well, that wants to accomplish, that wants to achieve, that wants to make a difference. I work with a lot of social impact organizations, and literally the idea is to change the system. And like that is something that, do you ever have a sense of accomplishment? Do you ever know that sending 3 more emails or staying up till 2 or being hyper attentive to text messages is making an impact? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But like these are big, really distant things sometimes, and we have a sense of urgency sometimes on something that is very hard to move, and we don't necessarily ever have even a whole career and know that we've moved the needle. But these high standards always happen to people who are learners, who are setting a standard for themselves, and who are really wanting to do something meaningful, something impactful. So if that sounds like you, you're definitely in the right place. And I just thought it was interesting to compare Google to also the internal dynamic. And this is part of why I do business healing, why I do prosperity healing. There's the logic, which says all of these things are causes, but then there's like, how does that feel in your body? And what is it that over time can turn into or can manifest inside your body? We want to heal and release that so it doesn't become physical health problem, mental health problem, emotional health problem. And it's energy, right? So anytime we have big feelings or we have big stress, and by the way, don't Google what happens with long-term stress because it's troubling. But that's why we want to start to address overworking now. My experience of overworking is that it is typically motivated, triggered by scarcity of time or scarcity of money. Happy to entertain other triggers, but those are the two main ones that I found. Either I don't have enough time or I won't have enough time, or I don't have enough money, I might not have enough money, and it might also be something else. So again, these are what came to mind as I was putting this together. And you might be here because of one of those things, time or money. So I'd like you to think about what tends to trigger overworking more for you. Is it lack of time, lack of money? Or lack of time to do the things you need to get the money you need? Or a combination of these. You don't have to answer. Like, you think about for you, which is the thing that tends to trigger you more. So in my individual prosperity work and my group program, my Pathway to Prosperity program, I have observed that there are 4 archetypes of overworking. So let's talk about it. These are the perfectionist, the productivity addict, the people pleaser, and the prosperity blocker. And I have a couple of surprises that I'm going to share with you around these, but let's dive in. So the perfectionist is the first one. Perfectionist archetype is driven by the fear that good enough really never is. They obsess over details. They struggle to delegate. They endlessly revise. They get motivated, they get excited, they get inspired, they get plans in place, and then they hide or they freeze. And I have somebody in my last group program who perfectly personifies this. And this person has done some magazine work, photo work, modeling. And they had a shoot 10 years ago and had beautiful, gorgeous photos, and then totally froze for 10 years. And by the time that they were thinking about being seen again, and it's not just like, how do I look in this, but it's like all of the ideas about what will happen when people see this. What will they think about me? What if it's not really quality? What if I think it's good and they don't think it's good? And essentially this person who's a hyper creative individual who's also started a graphic design business and is really successful in that, but showing up for other people and helping other people look good felt a lot easier than showing the photos and this side of themselves that's really expressively who they are. I asked them, if you were really in your own power, what would be happening? And they said, I'd be in front of the camera. I would be there. I would be just letting my personality flow. I'd be letting energy flow. And it was like, okay, well, if that's true, that sounds like a vitamin that you need to have regularly. So how do we get you vitamin camera, vitamin modeling? Because it needs to be a regular part of your diet if that's something that feeds you. And they had great plans and then they froze. But what happened recently, just before our program started, is they went to New York. They won an opportunity to get new photos taken. And they got the new photos taken by a top modeling agency. And they froze when it came to putting them out there. But what happened during the course of our program is we were working on confidence, and perfection is something that's really hard. Like confidence and perfection are kind of together. So by the end of this, they posted their photos online. They were feeling like really confident. So they were able to move through this perfectionism, which is massive. So they were able to move through this perfectionism to be vulnerable. And that's terrifying for most of us, right? Terrifying to be vulnerable in front of people, especially, I mean, imagine, yeah, confidence. I'm just seeing the chat. So confidence, probably both. Great. And yeah, I'm glad that came up. We're talking about confidence now, so that's great. I'm going to add that. Thank you, Dri. Archetype number 2, productivity addicts. I've already heard a couple of you say, ooh, productivity is my thing. So productivity addict is addicted to the dopamine hit of checking things off the list. They tend to seek constant optimization and improvement. Like that system, there's got to be a better system. If only I had the systems worked out, or I tried this system and it worked for a while, but then it didn't work. And then there's got to be more. And the idea that rest feels foreign, uncomfortable, or even wrong in the body. So, productivity addict. Is anyone seeing themselves in any of this? I definitely see myself in all of these at some level, or a past version of me did. So, hyper productivity, seeking that perfect way to get things done. Or then also, is not on here, but shaming yourself when you don't get what you thought you could accomplish done. It's like, but I had the goal to do these 6 things, but I only did 2. It's like, wow, you did 2. But the other 4 are kind of like hanging over you, looming. So I don't know if any of you have any dread around that. But I wanted to share some stories from clients that have worked with me on these particular challenges, these who self-identify with these archetypes. And I want to share with you, this is my client, Sean, and he couldn't make it tonight, but I told him that I saw so much growth in him around the area of productivity, because when we first started working together, he was obsessed with productivity, and the restlessness with like, not there yet, got to keep optimizing, really was where we started. And he shared with me some beautiful things this week. And I just said, would you mind if I share some of this during our workshop? So here's what Sean had to say. And I asked him these 3 questions. How did the productivity archetype show up for you? What would you say the archetype looks like in you now? And then what changed for you? What did you become aware of? What did you release? What did you learn that moved you beyond or through this particular archetype? So here's what he had to say.
Hey everyone, sorry I couldn't be with you at tonight's gathering, but Marta asked me to share the answers to a few questions as they relate to what you're discussing. Before I started coaching, a lot of these archetypes really described me well. If I had to pick one, it was just an obsession with productivity. And I think that obsession was very much tied to a prosperity blocker archetype of being stuck in pessimistic beliefs and unconsciously creating obstacles towards receiving. I think for me, the productivity was a way that I could push through, and that I needed to take hold and take charge of things in order for success to happen and for good things to come. But working with Marta has really transformed how I see things. I've become much more confident in the future and have envisioned and come to believe that there's a lot of great things in store for me. I've even come to experience a lot of those things already. And so my relationship back to those archetypes have been evolving and changing, where I don't necessarily feel like my productivity in doing tasks and doing work are directly tied to what's going to happen. I can relax and I can take breaks, and I even think that those breaks sometimes are a bigger part of my success than the actual work I'm doing. I've had the thought before that the right one thought is worth more than 1,000 hours of deep productivity, because if you just make one decision, it can lead you to a lot more than just grinding on whatever thing is in front of you. So that's been a big breakthrough to me. I've had a really great development in the way I feel time, and the way I don't allow myself to feel a lack of time. I feel like I have lots of time and a confidence that whatever needs to get done will fit into that time. And because of that, I can relax when it's not time to work. And when it is time to work, things just tend to flow a lot more, because I have a confidence that the future's already written in a beautiful way, and I'm just part of that path. So I've had a lot of great breakthroughs, and I hope that all of you continue to have big breakthroughs on your journeys as well.
I just always think it's like, if we're going through this, let's hear from others going through this. So I really appreciate Sean sharing that. And again, when I define prosperity, there are 7 areas in which you can experience prosperity. The one that most all of us experience regularly, time is like literally limited in our lifetimes. We don't know how much time we have, but most people rarely, if ever, feel abundance or prosperity of time. And it is so key because when you start to unlock time, prosperity, so many of the other things suddenly have space and room to flourish. So I appreciate Sean sharing that with us. The next one, the people pleaser. And this was a big one for me. The people pleaser says yes to everything, is afraid of disappointing others. The calendar is full of priorities, but usually not theirs. They're driven to over deliver and chase every lead. And they will do anything except leave possible money, possible connections, possible opportunities on the table. And I relate to this so, so much. Part of my training was as a professional musician. Professional musicians are constantly having people tell them how they want to hear the music, whether that's the conductor, whether that's the composer, and the directions on the page. And that trained me to be terrified that people would disapprove of me if I really showed who I was or what it was I wanted. So personal preferences got put to the side, also with a very overly giving mom who also gave a lot to her work. She was an elementary school teacher. I learned that honestly, right? And recently I had a client who was really obsessed with all of the leads that they were pursuing, but they felt like they couldn't let any of them go. And that was causing a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. So this one feels really resonant with me. We'll come back to this in a couple of minutes. But the fourth and final archetype is the prosperity blocker. And this is somebody who unconsciously creates obstacles to receiving. They believe that work involves struggle and proving their worth. There's a strong belief system about the way things work, maybe even some skepticism that it can really be any other way. Like, can you really not overwork and get where you want? And they're committed, but they're often disappointed in others. So they themselves are all in, but then they notice often that other people aren't as in as they are. So that's the prosperity blocker. And somebody really close to me has this archetype, and we've talked about it a lot. And the idea that serving clients really needs to be a full body activity, that the work, the mental work, and the emotional work need to be something you feel in your body. And you move a lot of energy in your body and therefore get depleted really fast. Their mental work became a physical condition, like a physical experience. But they're also noticing that the thought was, if I don't completely over deliver for my clients, they will cease to work with me. They will cease to think that my work is valid. So that's a really, really tough one. And I've seen people in my practice be able to move through that. So these are the four archetypes. And now I'm curious, which archetype do you identify with? Perfectionist, the productivity addict, the people pleaser, the prosperity blocker. Pablo identifies 1 and 2. Natalia saw a lot of habits under the perfectionist archetype related to the story I'd shared. Definitely productivity addict, says Kira. Dree says such a mix, perfectionist, productivity blocker, shaking off people pleaser day by day. Good for you. And, we're all evolving, right? So I see myself, there's still layers of these that I thought I'd healed and released that still come up, but healing is like an onion. You just got to keep allowing the layers to transmute, because what is heavy and hard starts to be a little lighter every time you meet it. It's like, oh, this again. Okay. Casey's got perfectionist. Marcia says a little bit of 2 and 4. Yeah, this stuff is really important. And I was actually chatting with a friend and a client earlier today, and we're talking about this idea of self-reflection. And very few people have a practice unless they're in therapy or unless they have some sort of practice. When is it that we actually do some of this self-inquiry in a non-judgmental way? And in music school, I learned a lot of negative self-talk because I was trying to literally be perfect, like play what was on the page, play the way the person in front of me wanted the work to be played. And I realized I carried that with me, even if I didn't have my instrument in my hands. And that ended up being not such a productive personal habit after a while. But when you are carrying with you these wounds, they start to be a bigger part of your life than they need to. And by wounds, I mean like when you're constantly self-negating or self-criticizing. Or I remember just at one point I was like, oh, I am observing I have thoughts and they're really not nice. And what would happen if I said nicer thoughts to myself or thought nicer thoughts about myself? And then that really was the start of my transformation. But when is it that we have an opportunity to kind of step back and self-reflect in a supported space where we're not beating up on ourselves, right? So those are just some reflections on the healing process. And I know I couldn't be doing this work if I hadn't been in a space to self-reflect. So that's part of what we're doing now. And that's part of why I love doing this work, because it's really supported self-inquiry. It's really us in a learning curiosity mode around what's happening with us. And self-study is a practice that it always delivers fantastic returns, but it's so rare, I find, that we have an opportunity to really engage in that in a safe, supported way that feels like we're out of our own head. Somebody just joined us, and I'd like to turn the mic over to them because they're going to talk a little bit about those same questions that I asked Sean. So I want to welcome to the stage Tamika.
Hello.
This is a wonderful group. We've just been going into the archetypes. We've been through all of them, but I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about the archetype that you most identified with and what has been your journey. And we were just saying, like, some of us see ourselves in a couple of them. So yeah.
That's what I was saying as I was looking through all of these. I was like, okay, I feel like I relate to most of these. But in terms of people pleasing, I feel like that is definitely one that I've probably worked through the most. And I look at the perfectionist one as like one that's still a work in progress. I would say, in terms of how did this one show up for me, definitely guilty of saying yes to everything and then realizing that at some point it didn't feel like I was running my day or running my life, and everything around me was always running me. And I think that was creating and can create a cycle of certainly feeling disconnected from purpose and disconnected from my work and my why, which all kind of sounds like a ball of like burnout when I'm not necessarily staying tuned into what I need or what should be the priorities in my life or in the business versus like, oh, I have to do this thing over here or over here. And a lot of times we may want to do all of those things. And I feel like it comes from a genuine place of wanting to do or wanting to help and continuing being this committee chair for 4 years when it was supposed to be one. Things just keep continuing and it becomes more and more and more. I think it can be hard to say no, especially when you're like, oh, but this could lead to this opportunity or turn into this, when you feel like setting a boundary could be perceived by somebody else as a negative. And I think for me, I had to look at where did that come from, of feeling like I need to say yes to the things, or even if it's a thing I am saying yes to that I want to do, but maybe I'm not necessarily setting what it needs to look like for what works for me. And like, where did that come from? And I think realizing that so much of that is just generational conditioning of like things that have just been lived. I think it was an interesting conversation that we had the last time we spoke, Marta, when I think of past generations or ancestors who didn't have a choice not to struggle. But now, where I do have that choice, why am I choosing it? I think that there's a beauty in that, where at least today in this present moment, we have more choice than those before us, whether that's as a person of color, as a woman, etc. We don't have to like choose that struggle, but in a way it's still ingrained and baked into maybe the anatomy of how we operate. And I think realizing that was helpful. And it was just like, hey, it's subconscious in a lot of ways. And just what I learned or saw in growing up, I have to do this and say yes. And that's the only way to achieve its prosperity, success, etc. And then I just ultimately realized through conversations with Marte, but then also conversations with others, choosing you is necessary for prosperity. And also like saying yes to everybody else. Hey, maybe that might be benefiting them, but like, what do you need? What does your team need? Because really, when you're saying yes to everybody else and no to yourself, that really ends up hurting you and those around you who need more.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And yeah, really thinking about your own needs and how you've reframed according to why am I choosing this? Again, it's that self-awareness of, oh, wow, other pathways are available. And what a powerful witnessing to hear you say that. I really, really appreciate that. And what's happening with you now in terms of this people-pleasing mode? What have you learned?
Echoing some of what I've shared, that ultimately it doesn't benefit anyone. Or maybe I'm just laughing because I'm thinking of a very recent scenario that really caught me off guard, where I was speaking with a potential client and I thought we were like aligned on the direction of where this was going to go. And then in just a follow-up conversation, their intention was never to pay me or to pay us. And it was just like very bizarre because the story was like, no, this is what we talked about. And I'm like, I am absolutely positive this was never the conversation. And it was really, I don't know, it just really threw me for a loop. But then I was like thinking about it. And in a way, I wish I had my note taker there, because like sometimes I like to reflect and watch these conversations back, but I didn't. And that's fine. And in a way, I was just like, wow, I feel like this person who really stood up for herself, even though it's like, hey, I've been in business, what, almost 10 years. And this is a person I think, as far as in the community, is respected. I've known and been in circles with for many years now. And I realized that coming out of that conversation felt like, wow, like this felt very self-serving for this individual. And I never default to the place of thinking that others are just opportunistic or want to take advantage of you, because I don't operate from that place. It just doesn't like occur to me in that way. It's usually my mom in the background, like, this person's trying to take advantage of you. I don't really look at things like that until I'm like forced to. So I kind of walked away from that conversation feeling like, hey, that was really the energy I was getting from this, but also proud of the boundaries that I held, but then also the way that I engaged with this person. And that might have gone a very different way, not of just maybe totally bending, but like maybe in the past would have been more of like, okay, well, let me try to find a way to make this work. So I think it was just energetically that doesn't feel right, because even somebody who would approach a conversation from a way and from a perspective that felt even maybe slightly deceptive or dishonest is just not even worth maybe the money or relationship, whatever it is you're going to get from it is worth, because that just ends up draining from other parts of you. So I think just being able to realize, hey, where is the best investment of my time? What does that mean overall in terms of how I feel? And also just being able to show up in a way that's like, hey, I know my value and what we bring to the table. And ultimately, there shouldn't be this trying to make it work, whether that's personally or professionally, for every scenario, just because you think you're afraid of what that person may think. I think that was like also a very common narrative that came up a lot. Like, what will this person think? Or what might this community that they're a part of think if I say this? Because now if they think I'm this mean, rigid, like whatever, insert whatever word applies type of person, then that might impact future XYZ opportunity.
Are you open to hearing what I'm hearing?
Sure.
Okay. I'm hearing that the old pattern of overwork came out of habit and unconscious. You even said the word unconscious, and felt comfortable in your body because it was normal. And so what I'm hearing is what has changed in you moving through this archetype or these archetypes is just greater discernment, not only as to what your choices are, but what other people are bringing to the table.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Love that. Wow.
I'll certainly not be a person to say of like, I'm not an overworker, because I don't think that's true at this stage. But I think there's a difference between running yourself into the ground and then whether it's staying up later, getting up early and being excited about the thing you're engaging in because it's aligned and you want to do more of it. And of course, there's going to be seasons of more and doing less, or pivoting on what the doing and working looks like. I haven't figured out that entirely, but I think ultimately the goal is for it to feel like, okay, if there's a lot being put in, it should be things that ultimately balance between the necessary things that obviously have to get done, but also joy and fun and play and excitement as well, a part of that, and not all feeling like these are have to do's and it's a never ending cycle of just mind numbing work.
Wow. Wow, I really relate to everything you're saying. Thank you so much, Tamika, for sharing your energy, your thoughts, your experiences, and I'm really excited for you. I'm really proud of you. I'm really delighted to see what happens next with these ahas and with the space you've created inside to really call in and live everything that you just talked about as your vision. So I love that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. We're getting some thank yous in the chat. We'll see you later.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I'm really, really thankful to Tamika for doing that. Hopefully that was something that was valuable to all of you too. All right, so we're at the point now where I had said at the beginning, we're going to do some journaling. So this is your time. So go ahead and pull out your notebook or your paper or your keyboard or whatever it is that helps you capture your thoughts. We already asked about the first one. Which archetype do you most relate to? Or if there are multiple, that's fine too. And then how is that or its behaviors? How is that archetype or its behaviors or its motivations or habits? How are those currently showing up in your life? And then the third thing is, what would be possible if this archetype or archetypes weren't running the show for you? Like, what if these things were not habitualized? What if these things were not so ingrained in your body that otherwise felt a little weird? Like Kira was saying, things are going well. I had anxiety over that. Like, wow, when you're succeeding and your body's like, what is this? This must be wrong. That's a big deal. So what if that anxiety wouldn't be running the show? So take 4 minutes to do some journaling. This is for you. This is some of that supported self-reflection that we talked about. If you want to take a screenshot, you're welcome to do that. If you want to continue to reflect on these, you're welcome to do that. Okay. All right, let's keep moving. So something I've noticed about these archetypes is that the energy behind them is really what is causing them to repeat. And those energies include, not necessarily limited to, and shout out if there are more you can think of that I didn't mention, but the energies that motivate these archetypes are fear, shame, lack, scarcity, and habit, which is an unconscious thing, like not being aware. Like Tamika said, she wasn't aware that she had a habit of overworking or not saying no. She had a habit of showing up for people or showing up for work without even thinking about it. When I'm working with clients on prosperity, there are 4 root causes that we work around, that we work with, that we work to release and heal. And all of the fear, shame, scarcity, lack of awareness are related to 4 things. So each of these archetypes really has a root cause, and the root cause, and maybe in the way that I've explained them, they don't necessarily tie up 100% like evenly with these 4 root causes, but the 4 root causes of lack of prosperity are limiting beliefs. If you believe that you have to deplete yourself in order to earn or to be worthy enough to receive, or if people don't like you, they're not going to hire you. Those are limiting beliefs that get in our way. The second thing is generational patterns. Tamika referred to that a little bit. If you've seen your parents deplete themselves or go into a career where they never have a break, it's something that you've learned. She did a great job of mentioning links with her own life and what our ancestors had to do because they didn't have the choices that we have. A lot of times they just had to do what they had to do to survive. But then some of those behaviors, attitudes, and unconscious beliefs are passed down. The third thing is lived experiences. So when we experience trauma or we experience something that we didn't grow up with, we start to create new beliefs and new patterns. And then the fourth thing is karma. And karma is just a teacher. Karma is just really cause and effect. And especially if you notice patterns, karma is just trying to help you learn the lessons that you need to learn. And if you're not going to do the self-inquiry in the supported way, or even self-study in an unsupported way, or supported by self, it's harder to notice patterns. So that's part of why I love doing groups. We always see things in groups that we don't see on our own. And that's why I'm so grateful you're here tonight. And hopefully this has really helped you. So I just thought it'd be helpful to talk about what's lingering underneath these that maybe it's helpful to name. And then also some of the root causes for how that can show up unconsciously. And again, we're not thinking about it. So it's like, how do I keep grinding and not move anywhere? Well, some of this is just being able to step out of the grind and observe yourself and to ask some of these questions. So you've done your journaling, which is great. And now I'd like to just lead a very brief visualization. If you're driving, just do this later. Don't drive and do this at the same time. I invite you to close your eyes, take a breath, and really settle into a new vision. So I invite you to visualize the absolute most nurtured version of you. And let's just imagine yourself in a room. You know, you're in a white bubble, you're in a white box, you're in a white space, neutral. Nothing is positive or negative, it's just very neutral. You're in a very blank space. And you notice yourself in this blank space and imagine what you're wearing in this kind of neutral space as the most nurtured version of you. So the most nurtured version of you that is free from overworking, that is free from these patterns of scarcity, lack, and belief, of generational suffering, of just being unconscious. You are free from all of that. You are now the most nurtured version of you. And you're in this space, and I invite you to just visualize, what is it that you're doing? What expression is on your face? This most nurtured, free from overworking version of you. What do you look like physically? What is your energy like? What are you wearing? Are you by yourself or are you with other people? If you're by yourself, what does that relationship with yourself look like? How much do you trust yourself in this most nurtured version of you? How much do you involve yourself in things that don't concern you? How are you with boundaries? Like this most nurtured version of you, how do you approach success? How does that feel in that version of your body? If there's any energy related to worthiness, what is that energy? What's that relationship like? Is there any energy that's related to lack or scarcity? If so, what is that energy like? If that's not there in this version, then okay, that's also important to note. Then what are a couple of qualities that stand out about this version of you that makes them valuable and that makes them valued as a person? A couple qualities that make you valuable in this version and valued by others. This version of you, how did they know when they've attained plenty or plenty and more? And this could be money, this could be time, this could be people, support, trust in self, letting go of control. How do they know when they've attained this plenty and more? Do they feel and look rested? How do they practice rest? What's their relationship with their physical container, with their bodies? And then what has been possible for them due to this nurtured way of living and working? This version of you may feel very unfamiliar, or they may feel very familiar, but something you've lost touch with. So take a moment and consider that they have a special message for you that they will share with you now. And I invite you to notice this message, make note of it. You will remember it later. But they're sharing this message with you that is just for you. This is their medicine for you in this moment. And just receive that message. Again, if it's a symbol or an image or a sensation or a feeling or words, however it comes to you is the right way. And if it doesn't make sense to you now, it will make sense to you as you integrate and process what we've done tonight. So now I invite you to give them a hug, give them a high five, thank them for showing up for you today and showing you, reminding you about them existing and them having wisdom to share in this way. So time to say goodbye. So let's imagine them moving farther and farther into the white space until they disappear. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. And just to recap, we've discussed overworking, what creates it. We met the 4 archetypes and some real life examples of people who have evolved through those. We've done some reflecting and some visualizing. We have this time left, and I invite you, if anything came up for you during the session, like the archetype or the visualization or what you heard from other people, you're very welcome to share. So if you'd like to ask questions about anything that we discussed or receive some coaching, some support, I'm totally open to that too. But this is your time. I'd love to hear where you are, what's coming up for you. And again, this is the space, the container for you to be curious, to be courageous, and I'm here to support that. And I think we're all here to support that since we agreed to that at the beginning. So what came up for you want to explore or poke at a little bit? Or what just came up that you'd like to share? Kira, go ahead.
Something that came up was love, which is something that I feel like I only until this point associate with you have like work and life. And I'm like, well, life, I have love and friendships and relationships. And love is not usually the first thing that I associate with business because I think I was just conditioned to be productive and like you're saying, optimizing and streamlining and all that stuff. It's very hard to be loving in that environment. But I just did feel a sense of when we were doing that exercise, just overwhelming sense of comfort and love. And it was almost like the state of being I was in is like right before I get a massage when I'm like waiting on the table and I'm like, oh, I can't wait. Like I'm so comfortable. This is going to be great. I'm just peaceful. And I just loved welcoming that in the perspective of prosperity and the fact that it really can be that easy, speaking to myself like that and looking at prosperity in business in the lens of love. So it made me really happy and feel really comforted and warm.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's so special. Are you open to just a little bump to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so love is the energy of prosperity because ultimately what we all want as human beings is love. We also want to take care of our needs, and that's money and time and all of those things. And this comes up in the groups that I run quite often. We talk about the personal energy prosperity signature. So your personal energy prosperity signature is comfort and love.
Mm,
So when you are in that energy, you are attracting opportunities, you're attracting people, you're attracting abundance, and you expand time.
mm,
So when you find that most nurtured version of you, that's actually what you ought to experiment with if you feel called. You don't have to do anything, right? But if you feel like it, maybe try bringing that into your business life. Like what happens if you feel loved and comforted and secure and full before you hit your laptop?
mm. I love that because it almost sets a like a boundary or a guardrail on like if I'm not coming from this space, then I'm probably not going to be able to get intentional work done. Um, so I love that, setting that up for myself. So beforehand, it's like a gut check. And then if I'm not in that space, it's like, I think you were saying vitamins before. Um, it's like taking, like, I need to be in that space or else it can't happen.
Right.
I love that. Thank you for that.
Welcome. And just a further nugget on that is the optimization you've been craving is that.
Mm,
That's your real productivity.
thank you. I needed that.
Yeah. And here's the thing, our Western culture prioritizes and elevates hustle and grind and work as the thing that's going to save us.
Mhm.
But logic and action without heart often fail to deliver the results we want. You're invisible when you're in hustle mode. And when you are in your energy prosperity signature, you are visible from space because the energy is the thing that's different.
Thank you. That was so lovely.
Welcome. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for allowing me to poke a little bit. Anyone else want to share something or have questions?
I appreciated this so much. It was deliciously uncomfortable and very necessary.
I love that. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, deliciously uncomfortable. And that's the thing is like what in the end, something's going to be uncomfortable, like either keeping on the pattern or doing some gentle, curious self-poking, right? So I witnessed that and that's really huge. That's really huge. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I prefer it to be growth too, right? Totally, totally. Okay, Marcia can't think of anything. Wonderful. Yeah, and remember, for each of you, your most nurtured version of you is probably the version of you that you've been reaching for. And what would it be like to bring that person and to live that archetype rather than these archetypes that we're just repeating or we're on autopilot? Because again, a lot of this is unconscious. So in a moment, we're going to complete, and I want to acknowledge all of you for your time, your participation, your intentions. You'll all get an email from me with the replay link. And also in that email, there's going to be an invitation to respond. You can respond to set up a 30-minute call if you want to go through anything one-on-one that came up today or that we talked about and how it applies to you. That would be a complimentary call for those of you who are here and those who are watching the replay. And one final thing, you've heard me say I really love doing group programs. I really do. I have a lot of joy from this space. And I do have a group program that's starting the third cohort in May. That's the Pathway to Prosperity program. So when you receive the email, if you feel like you want to hop on a call to talk about that program, that's something you want to explore more about, definitely schedule a call. And if you want to talk through things that came up today and you're also interested in the program, we can talk about both. So this call is yours to schedule either way. This is something that I do. I offer service programs like this. I do a lot of calls with people. I'm here to support. And if you're interested in anything, definitely make sure, or if something triggered you today, like delicious uncomfortableness, definitely make sure you schedule a call if you feel called to it. And I'm happy to talk about and support you in addition to whatever else you'd like to talk about on that call. And I do thank you for your time, your attendance, your investment in yourself. I'm super grateful for you being here, doing the uncomfortable thing, because it's a lot easier to just keep doing what we've been doing. So you slowed down today, you made an investment in yourself, and that is massive. And I'm so thankful for that. And yes, may you be super prosperous